I'm standing on a hilltop in West Texas, and it's a very common looking hilltop for the Edwards Plateau. And at first glance, it doesn't look like there's much going on around here. There's a little bit of wildlife. You can hear some birds in the distance. And there's a lot of rocks. And they look like plain rocks. But what we're actually looking at is a procurement site. P-R-O-C-U-R-E-M-E-N-T. And this is where our native ancestors would have gotten their raw material, chert, to make stone tools like projectile points and scrapers and things like that. And indeed, you find some of that kind of stuff up here. Here's a little bifacial scraper right here. So they were up here using these tools as well as making things, but mainly they were just gathering raw material to take back with them. And we can see the evidence of that even right here. This is a little piece that came off a larger cobble that they had knocked pieces off to see what kind of chert was inside. Because these cobbles come from these rocks. Let me see if I can find an example. They form as nodules. You can see a couple of nodules on the rocks here and here. I'm looking for one inside the rock to give you an example of what it looks like before it comes out of the rock. Let me see if I can find one over here somewhere. Let's see. Well, I'm not having much luck at the moment, but maybe we'll pick one up later. Let me just show you what one of these nodules looks like first. Okay, here's one that has been tested. Okay, they look like a little piece of rock, and the ancients would have come up here and they would have knocked little flakes off to test it to see how well a material could knap. Flintknapping is the process of turning something like this into a useful tool. And you'll find all over this hilltop these examples of tested cobbles. For whatever reason, many of these were rejected. Others, they would take down a little bit further, and you can find the pieces that they knocked off and tried out as well. Here's a good example of one that's been tested. They tried bifacially testing it, and they ran into a few troubles, and so they decided not to use this one. That happened a lot. You can see the evidence of all of this process all along here. There's little pieces that they took down further and tried and just kind of left behind. Why would they leave all this stuff behind? Well, they're after the nodules. And the nodules, like I said, occur in this rock, but they're really hard to get out. So they wouldn't have been trying very hard to get the rocks out of the nodule, or I'm sorry, the nodules out of the rocks. What they were doing was collecting already free nodules, which would have been above the rocks on the very top of the hill. These rocks are just the latest incarnation of the Edwards limestone. And we're standing in a place where there used to be more layers of rock. And in these layers of rock, nodules of chert formed, just like the ones that are forming in the rocks right, or had formed in these rocks right here that are still present. But the nodules up here remain after that soft limestone has eroded away. In fact, here's a good example of one. This would have originally been encased in limestone, would have been in the limestone levels, and it formed there. And this one doesn't even look like it's been tested. This is a very nice sample. We might have to take that one back with us. All right. Let me see if I can find some examples of what they would have done with this. They didn't want to carry this big heavy thing back with them. What they wanted to do is they wanted to get rid of as much of it as possible so that they didn't have as much weight to carry. So they would have gotten rid of all of this what we call cortex. It's the transition from the limestone to the chert. And this is what a piece of cortex looks like with the chert on the inside. So they would have tried to remove all of this stuff to get rid of excess weight. And oh, here we go. Here's an example of one that has been, most of the cortex has been removed. There's a little bit of cortex remaining here, but this nodule it would have been much larger, and they wouldn't have been able to use much of the material that they took off. So they leave that here. They would take something like this with them. For whatever reason, they decided not to take this one. Perhaps they wanted to save it for later. Many different reasons. They might have had more desirable chert that they already had taken. Oh, here's another one right here. This one is a little bit further reduced, and this could actually be turned into a biface by somebody who knows what they're doing. The process of reducing something like this into something like this and then to something like this is called bifacial reduction, and it's a form of flintknapping, and it's the basic way to make tools.